an airplane or in an interview, or you sit next to a chatty Cathy at a party, and they ask you the question, so, tell me about you. I have to admit, I hate this question. I never know what they want me to say. Do they want me to spill my life story? Should I be vague and fuzzy? Should I tell them something vulnerable? Is that too much? And so I decided to create a little framework for myself so that I knew exactly how to answer this question. And I've been using it. It's been so helpful that I wanted to share the framework with you. I'm going to tell you exactly how you should answer this question so that it gives a great answer without being too vague or too overly specific, as well as some things not to do. In fact, I want to start with the not to do's first. First, don't be a deer in the headlights. I think the first couple times someone asked me this question, so tell me what you do, I basically went like this. There was so many possible answers in my head that I basically became a deer in the headlights and couldn't say anything at all. Number 2, don't spill your life story. So after I had those few deer in the headlight moments, I kind of went the other direction. And I was like, well, when they ask, tell me about you, they must want to hear everything. And so I started to share everything. Oh, well, I was born in Los Angeles, California, and I'm a Taurus. And my mom had eggs for breakfast the day that I came into the world. And my dad was really nervous, but he was like, I went into my whole life story and I could just see people like slowly back away. So this is not an invitation to share your entire life story. Number 3, don't be oddly vague. So after I was deer in the headlights and then sharing my life story, the next thing I tried to do was kind of skirt this question because I didn't like it. So I would share very vague generalities. Oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Been a little here, a little there. I do all kinds of things. I keep busy. The problem with that answer is it didn't satisfy anyone and it made me seem low confident. So what do you do? If you don't want to do those 3 things, here is what I want you to do when someone asks, tell me about you. Step number 1, add a positive qualifier. Tell me about you is a big question. And so you want to start off with a qualifier that you're not going to give your entire life story, but you are going to give the good parts. This is a great way to set yourself up for success. And also it hopefully is going to reel people in. So I typically start off with something like when someone asks me this question, oh my goodness, well, I'll skip to the good parts. Or, ooh, there are so many good things. How about I tell you about? That way, I'm not prefacing that it's going to be a whole big thing, but I'm going to give them just the juicy highlights. That way, I also give myself permission to not have to give my entire life story. So try, oh, where to begin? So many exciting things. Or, let's see, I'll skip to the good parts. Step number 2, give yourself a label. So this is the one that people most often get confused with. And the way that our brain works is it likes a hierarchy of facts. Let me explain this concept. So basically, our brain likes to work in sequence, and it likes to start with the biggest categories down to the most specific ones. So if I were to say, I love working with students, your brain would say, what kind of students and what do you teach? And if I were to say, oh, I love teaching English to students, my brain would say, okay, English to students, what age and where? But if I start off with, I'm a teacher, I love teaching English to students, immediately the brain gets it because I started off with the big label, I'm a teacher. So what I want you to start off with when someone says, tell me about you, is what is the label that makes you feel most proud? That could be professional. Are you a marketer, a teacher, a writer, entrepreneur? Or it could be something personal. Are you a mother or a wife or a team leader or a church leader? When you think about those labels, that's going to help someone get grounded. Ah, they are a mother. Ah, they are a teacher. That label is going to help them categorize whatever you're about to say next. So usually I say, well, I'm a writer and a mother. So those are my 2 big labels, and that gets someone to go, oh, okay, I know a little bit about her. And then I go into step number 3. Step number 3 is tell a story with a hook. The reason why sometimes tell me about you can trap us is because it doesn't always invite stories, and people end up listing facts. They say, well, I'm a mom and I live in Texas and I love vegetables and they end up just listing a bunch of facts, but no one likes facts. They're really hard to remember. So what I'd rather have you do is start off with that qualifier. Oh, interesting question. Let me give you the good parts. Well, I'm a writer and a mother. And then you want to give some kind of story. Typically, this is your origin story or what got you started. That's the story that usually people like to hear the most. So I might say, I'm an introvert and recovering awkward person. And growing up, I always didn't understand how people work. And so in my 20s and 30s, I began to discover some really interesting behavior hacks. I started writing about them. And then I got invited to give a TED Talk that went viral. And here I am. Now I write about behavior and psychology and emotional intelligence on YouTube. That way it's a very, very short story. People who are very hooked in with, I was an introvert and a recovering awkward person. And they can use any piece of my story to ask another question. What was your TED Talk about? Why were you introverted? I'm introverted too. What do you write about? Where do you write? You do YouTube? How do you do YouTube? So there's a couple of hooks in that story that invite someone to ask more. So I want you to think of a story, maybe your origin story, maybe a success story, maybe a funny story, and in there have a couple of things that you don't expand on to hopefully invite further questions. This also makes sure that your answer stays under a minute. You'll notice that little answer I just gave is under 60 seconds, but it invites all kinds of interesting conversation. Bonus step here is to end on a question. So typically once I finish my little spiel or my little story, I'll say, how about you? Or are you introverted? Or what do you like to write about? Whatever it is in the context, to try to toss it back to them so that we can actually have a back and forth and I don't have to share my entire life story in detail. So I try to end on a question if I can, but if you've told a really good story, they're already asking their next question and then you're in a great conversation. The most important part of this video is if there's a question that people regularly ask you that makes you feel uncomfortable, I want you to come up with a framework that works for you. So if people ask you, what do you do? And you don't like that question, sit down and come up with an answer that you do like. If people ask, tell me about you, sit down and write a positive qualifier, a little label for yourself, and a story with a hook. If someone asks, where are you from, and you don't like talking about where you're from, think of a funny side step of an answer. The most important thing here is to be purposeful. We are asked questions all the time by people who are well-meaning. They just want to get to know us. And so if you have answers that make you feel confident and proud, that showcases your best self no matter what situation you're in. So I'd practice your answer, if you're willing, in the comments below. Tell me what you say to tell me about you. Do you have any other tips? Do you have any other answers? If you can, try my formula below so I can read how you use my formula and see how it works. I hope you liked this video. If you have other ideas for videos or questions you want me to answer, put them in the comments and I'll add it to my list. Be sure to give this video a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in our next video.